Coming to you live from a little grass shack in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's the Junior Kekuewa Jr. Show, starring Junior Kekuewa Jr.
Why couldn't we get a real announcer?
Join Junior along with the Wayne Borhe Band as he makes any kind from Hawaii.
I'm just saying, man, you know, I deserve
And now,
it.
ladies and gentlemen, Junior Kekuewa Jr.
Oh, how's the Hawaiians? How you Hawaiians? How you Hawaiians? Hawaiians. Boy. Is this okay. All right, now I'm ready. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm Junior Kekuewa Jr. And so we want to welcome everybody. And also, we have a couple countries. We have, new demographics. Basically, we're not going to get into that. Okay, our demographics are 35 to dead with some younger people. Okay, yeah, we have some younger people. More and more, I think, young people in their 20s, because those are the people that come to me for life coaching for, modern males. Confidence.com if you want to check that out. So they come to me for life coaching. And so we applaud you 20-somethings, because in my day, the only thing that was on the menu was surfing, women, okay, and women. So anyway, we want to also welcome all the women. Chicks dig me. I don't know. It's just like they just yeah. I've always been very, very grateful that God always sends his angels, So thank you, ladies, for being here. And on today's podcast, we're going to talk about the Pinoy Musika story. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how it happened, what happened, and where it is today. Okay, so I made this decision back in 1997. My voice was kind of going out. I was in mainstream radio for a long time, and my voice was kind of like really like in and out. And so I had problems. I wanted to get out of mainstream radio, and I wanted to just go cruise at some, small little station, right? And I knew this guy, and later on in history, we worked together, and he has the second largest radio show in Hawaii. Still does. Okay, he still does. But anyway, so I went to, consult him, and he was the supervisor. He was a program director at this small Filipino station, right? And so he's listening to me, and we're talking story as I'm working on this, mainstream radio station. And he's on this little station, and, the tables just turned. It just, so you got to know, you got to be nice to people, guys, okay? You guys in your 20s, you got to be nice to people, because you never know where they're going to end up, okay? This guy was on a small little Filipino station, but here's your big fat but he was the godfather of hip-hop in Hawaii. He started the hip-hop movement in Hawaii, the music, okay? And anyway, so he was there, and I was on this, regular, I can say the call letters. It was KORL AM, and I was working there with some pretty top-notch professionals, and I was very honored, and I was on the weekends. So anyway, actually, I was on weekends first, then I was on overnight. So anyway, so then, I needed a break. I needed to get out, from this grind that I was in. And so I decided that I wanted to work at this Filipino radio station, because I thought, wow, playing hip hop with this guy would be cool. Okay, so, it's a small thing. It's not a demanding role. It's just, weekends, whatever, that kind of thing. Evening. I think it was like 2 hours in the evening. That's all it was. And so I'm like, okay, I want to go over there. So I talked to him. I said, hey, can you talk to the boss? Whatever. Okay, so I go there, and he quits like 2 months after. 2 months after I get there. I didn't have anything to do with that, but he quit, and he got a good job managing a rent-to-own thing, right? So I take over as the program director of the radio station. Now the boss comes to me one day, because this girl who did the 12 noon slot. And she, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, but, and she passed away. She's no longer with us, but she had the 12 noon slot, and she was very, very popular, like immensely popular. Like, this girl was like an institution in the Filipino community, and she was young. She was very young. Okay. She was still in her 30s, and, she was widely known.
and a great reputation and a very loving lady. She was so loving, and she had a disabled daughter that she took care of. Okay, and so she just had this great heart. She had this great radiance, and everybody just loved her. Okay, so anyway, the boss calls me one day, and he goes, "Hey, she got in a car accident," and I'm like, "Oh man!" And then he goes, "Can you sit in?" And I'm like, "Okay." Well, so I sat in, right? And I sat in for a couple of days because she was out for a couple of weeks. And she had to, go do doctor things and whatever. And so she was out for a couple of weeks. And after a couple of days, he pulls me into his office and he goes, because I'm the, program director, right? He called me the program supervisor. I don't know. It was just, that part was just a little ego clash kind of deal. And so he called me the program supervisor, but I was the program director. And, incidentally, a side note here, let's go to the left, Hawaiians. I beat the Hawaiian station from this little Filipino station, okay? I beat this Hawaiian station several times, okay? There was this Hawaiian AM station, and I beat that AM station. It no longer exists, but I beat that station in a few books, okay? Now, the other thing that happened was I beat the biggest AM radio station in a couple of books, okay, with this girl who worked for an optometrist. Okay, she was an assistant to the optometrist, but she had a Sunday program. And the reason why we, got the ratings is because on Sunday mornings, the big station, okay, where it's, I don't want to mention names, but that big radio station, they have an AM and an FM, and they simulcast the AM and the FM. And so on Sunday mornings, they play religious programming. They have an hour. So stations have to abide by that. They have to donate, religious. Well, they don't have to donate it, but they have to air it. So anyway, so there's this religious show. So when people were listening to, tuning out actually from the religious show, they were tuning into us. But here is the real awkward thing, the real weird thing. Okay. Instead of listening to somebody else, they had to go from that top station, which was all the way at 59. Okay. All the way. This is the beginning of the dial. And they had to go all the way down to 1540 where we were. So in other words, there's a whole bunch of radio stations in the middle. Okay. So to get to us, to make us number one on Sundays, they had to make a lot of effort. Okay. But we as a small station were making a lot of noise. And in the industry, making a lot of noise means that you're getting a lot of attention. So anyway, but that's a little bit of backstory on that. So we were successful in beating not only the Hawaiian radio station, which was like uber popular, but we beat the number one station, and they were like way over here on the dial, and we were like way down there, and people made the journey all the way, ignored everybody else, and came to listen to us. So we were honored. Anyway, so now, right, he goes, "You want to take over for her because I think she's going to be out for a long time." And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know." So this came up, right? And he offered me a Filipino radio show, basically, okay? Now, I did not know anything about Filipino culture. I did not know anything about, I knew I loved Filipino girls. I knew that. I knew that part. I was like, oh, okay, are there any perks? I mean, I'm just kidding. So, but he, so he told me, and I said, "Ah, man, like if I do this, Filipino people are going to get mad at me. I can see them like storming the station or just, calling up, whatever. And I can feel the hate already. Like the hate's going to come if I go on because I don't know anything. I don't speak the language, I don't, nothing. Right. So anyway, so now, let me go through this really quick because I should do a podcast about this, but we're just going to do a small little glimpse of it. So finally, he said, "Well, just think about it, go home, whatever." So I did that. I came back, and then in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'm a team player. I have to think of the team. I'm the leader of the team. So I'm going to just jump in and try this. And so I tried, right? So I got there. Now, the first day I was there, I think I said mabuhay or something like that, right? Because, common knowledge, right? Everybody knows mabuhay in Hawaii. And so I said mabuhay or whatever. So these ladies that stayed at home, and there was a bunch of these ladies that were seamstresses, and they were in warehouses in this place called Kalihi. And so when you go into these warehouses, they would be sewing these aloha shirts. Okay. And they have different labels for different companies, for different brands, and they sew them on because they're just the factory. And it was incredible to see that. I didn't know that exists at the time. So anyway, these ladies were listening. And so they used to call me up and they used to go, "Oh, Junior, you need to say, magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat mga kaibigan." And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? And so they go, magandang. And so I had to write this down. So I was writing this down. Well, long story short, the Filipino people taught me Tagalog. Okay, so for you Filipino people out there, hindi ako marunong ng Tagalog pero konti lang. Okay, so just so there's no misunderstanding, I'm not fluent. And what I said was, I'm not that good in Tagalog, but a little bit. Okay, that's what I said. Just for my Filipino friends, I love Filipino people. They treated me like royalty over there. The community, they just like they spoiled me. So anyway, so now my life becomes like everything Filipino, and now I get pulled out of mainstream culture, right? Pop culture. If you ask me, what was American pop culture between the years of 1997 and what was it? So I was there from I'm sorry, 1987. From 1987 to 1992, I have no recollection. There's a big blank in my head from 1987 to 1992. Okay. Because I was doing Filipino radio. So, and because I did a Filipino radio program, right? Now I went to Filipino weddings. I went to Filipino this, Filipino that, Filipino functions, Filipino pageants, Filipino everything. And the people there like accepted me. I was like an adopted Filipino. I mean, they adopted me. And I say this in the fondest sense because I love those people. I mean, they were so good to me. And they took me in like one of their own, and you would never know that, I wasn't Filipino because they treated me like one, and I just kind of blended in. And this is what I tell you. So here's the life coaching part, right? This is why they say, show me 5 of your closest friends and I'll tell you who you are. Okay. Because humans adapt. Okay. So I adapted to the Filipino community. So now that I did that, I met this lady, and here's the Pinoy Musika part. Okay. I met this lady who was, and I'm not going to name her because, legal reasons. Sorry, we got to keep it like that. But anyway, I met this lady who wrote Ilocano songs, and she wrote the most passionate love songs. Oh my God. Like all of these songs, and she was probably when I met her, she was probably in her 40s. So she was at least, at the time, 15 years older than I was, maybe a little more. And so I started talking to her, and she told me this story. And she started telling me stories about like when she was younger and like all these things that she wrote about later in life. Like all these, the way she felt about so-and-so and this and that and her boyfriends in the Philippines and all this. And I was like, whoa, I was inspired. Okay, I was very inspired. And she had this group. And it was a club. And this club would record her songs, her Ilocano songs. And then the kids, so this was a great community project. The kids would sell the recordings, and then they would take the money that they received from the sales, and they would go record more. So she actually recorded like tons of her original music. It was phenomenal. And they came out with, in those days it was cassettes, and they came out with tons of cassettes. And then she started putting them on CDs. So she built this legacy, and the kids grew up singing this. Now on Filipino radio, on this other station so we had 2, and this other station, which I also will leave out. I can say the one I worked on is Kiss AM because they're out of business. They folded. So I was on Kiss AM. There was this other one that's still around. And anyway, so that was our competition. And so these people would start playing her compositions to help the kids. So I decided, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to help the kids. And so I started incorporating that into the programming, and I purposely pushed it with the disc jockeys that I was supervising. And so anyway, we started playing it. They had this concert. They invited me to the concert. They recognized me at the concert. They did all kinds of stuff. And I mean, and I was so happy that they were very popular. These kids were stars in the Filipino community. And there was like a handful of them. And their music was played day and night. And that was one of my all-time favorite accomplishments. Because it wasn't my ballpark. It wasn't my sandbox. It wasn't my community. I was a visitor. I was a guest. And I went in, and when I went in, I made changes. And those changes will forever be, remembered, I guess, because, everything's gone now. the whole radio station's gone, everything. So anyway, so now I decide that I want to make a contribution because before, when this was all going on, okay, these kids were famous in their community, and they were being played on two Filipino radio stations in the Filipino community, and they were celebrities, but there was nothing in the regular mainstream radio for Filipino people. Okay, there was no Filipino music. If you wanted Filipino music, like from the Philippines, you had to go to a Filipino store, and these people brought it back from the Philippines, or they had it shipped in from the Philippines. Okay, so this is the only way you got Filipino music. You go to a Filipino video store or a Filipino store in our town, Kalihi, or in Waipahu, or Eva Beach, or wherever it is. And you could get Filipino music there from the Philippines. But there was nothing in America, nothing in the mainstream, nothing in, regular like Tower Records kind of thing or Sam Goody's like that. There was nothing. And I thought, wow. Like, we need to do a project so that we can get Filipino music in the mainstream and get it recognized and really, and, have the kids have a chance to do recordings and stuff. Like, so in other words, take her model, this lady, right? But do it in the regular community so that they can actually support Filipino music, so they can appreciate Filipino music. Because the project was about being Filipino, being proud you're Filipino, and sharing your music with the world, sharing Filipino music with the mainstream commercial market. So my company, Imua Productions, started recording. So now I built a recording studio in my house. This was at a time right before everybody had a studio in their house. Okay, this is like, I was one of the innovators. I wasn't the original. I wasn't like, the first or anything like that. But I was in that wave of first home studio people. So I built a home studio, and we had digital and analog equipment. And so I decided to approach this record company that I will also remain nameless, mostly because they owe me royalties for all kinds of music now. But anyway, but I went to this record company. Now you can look for this album online. You can buy it online. It's called Pinoy Musika. Okay, so it's Musika, Musika. Okay. Anyway, so this, and it's still available for purchase, and people can download it, and from iTunes and that kind of thing. So anyway, I went to this guy, and he was the son of the owner of the record label, and they were winning Hoku Awards every year. They were getting all kinds of accolades and everything, and they had institutions of Hawaiian music on their label, because these were people that they had recorded over the years from like way back. I mean, from the 40s, 50s, that kind of thing. So they had some legendary performers, Hawaiian performers. So I sat down with the guy, and I pleaded my case, so to speak. I said, we really need to do something. And I've worked for the Filipino community for years, and this project would work, and we need to get it in like the mainstream. So, or at least try. So he said, all right, yeah, I'll go in on the deal with you. So I made the deal. So the deal was, I would produce everything. I would write all the English songs on the CD, and this lady would provide all the Ilocano music. Okay, and there was a Tagalog song as well. There was a Tagalog song by this guy who was he was a dental assistant in Las Vegas, but he was Filipino, and they got in touch with me because they found out I was doing this, and through the grapevine, Filipino community kind of thing, and so we had him on, and he did a Tagalog song. But anyway, so so we got these things together. So I talked to this lady and she said, oh yeah, okay, And so what I did was I took my students that were, so I had this singing school. It was called Voice Master Singing School back in the day. And we were the first commercial singing school in Hawaii. Before that, you had to go to like voice teachers. There were 2. That was it. And you had to know music industry professionals to get in touch with them because they didn't advertise. They weren't a formal thing. They taught in little studios in their house, that kind of thing, right? So anyway, that was what the environment looked like. So in 1989, we started the first formal singing school called Voice Master Singing School. Anyway, that's another podcast, Hawaiians. Okay, so I saw the need there, and I go, okay, yeah, we need to open this up. The second year we were there because we advertised in the phone book the first year. Okay, we were the only ones for 1 year in the phone book, and that was the way we advertised in the old days before the internet. And the next year, the following year, there was like 11 people because the salespeople that were trying to sell and make more money from ads would go to other people. Go, you should teach voice. This. You see this guy over here, Junior. He's teaching voice master. You guys need to teach voice. And then all these musicians, all these guitar players, piano players, and none of them were voice teachers. I was a voice teacher. My background is in classical music. I had a very I love my teacher. She was the cream of the crop in classical music in Hawaii, and she didn't clone people. Okay, that's a inside term. But in classical music, because of the pronunciation, you can get people like sounding kind of close to each other. This one teacher, this other teacher, actually started having people go after this Hawaiian music artist, and pretty soon all of her students started sounding like the guy, and they would go to her and they go, hey, we want to sound like Robert, and she would just clone people, which I thought was, yeah, I had an opinion about that, Hawaiians, but I'm going to keep it to myself. Anyway, so it does a disservice to people. That's why, because they end up sounding like the other guy, and then they're not the other guy, and yada, yada. Okay. So anyway, now here we are. The guy said yes. The guy from the record company, he accepted my idea. Okay. And I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. So now we start recording in my studio, and I take all my students, right? Because like, okay, well, I'm going to record my students first and foremost. So we start doing compositions. Now, I did something very interesting with some Ilocano music. I started arranging. So I did a lot of arranging on that album. And I started arranging Ilocano songs like stage band numbers. Okay, because in high school band, stage band was a big thing. Mm-hmm. And so stage band was a huge thing, and high school bands would have a stage band, and they would be rivals with the other high schools and whatever. So I was very attracted to stage band arrangements, and so I started doing these contemporary arrangements for Ilocano music, which everybody in the Filipino community went, wow, you can do that. So these, Ilocano is a country language, and this is country music, basically, okay? Filipino country music. And this is the music that they play outside in the country, not in the city, not in Manila, not in the metro area, that kind of thing. These guys are way up north, okay? Anyway, so I took this country music and I started, so we had horns. We had a horn section. I wish I had a sample on the podcast. I would play it for you. But if you go to Pinoy Musika, okay, you'll hear some stage band arrangements of Ilocano music, and those are my arrangements. Anyway, so Wayne Borge, my music partner of 30-something years. Wayne was my best friend. I met him when he was when I was 24 years old. I spent my whole entire adult life with him. He moved in with me and my fiance. I was engaged at the time, and then that kind of went down the road a little bit, and then that broke up. That didn't happen. Thank you, Father God. Anyway, I'm joking. Well, maybe I'm not. I don't know. But anyway, it was a good decision. It was a great decision. What happened? Everything for a reason. Okay. But anyway, when my fiance left, we had the studio because that was the plan. Move in together and build a studio, start the business and everything. And I started the company, Imua Productions, which became VMAC Consultants eventually. So today, when you go online, you can actually search VMAC, VAMAC, consultants. And VMAC, actually, there's a long story behind that, but, that's for another podcast. But VMAC stands for Voice Master Advertising Consultants. Okay, so VMAC Consultants. Anyway, all of the music and stuff, like you'll find a bunch of jingles and recorded music and all kinds of stuff on YouTube from our company. And if you search on Facebook, you can see all the projects we did, and you can see like our big retailers that we handled and stuff like that. We were contracted to one of the nation's biggest retailer, drugstore chain. And other stuff, but anyway, that's a side thing, Hawaiians. Okay, back to the story. Here we go. So I started recording. I only have so much time. Sorry, but so I started recording these kids, right? And these kids thought it was fantastic, and I signed everything, and the lady who did her music, who offered her music, right? All of her music was copyrighted. Everything, my music was copyrighted. And then we signed for the licensing for the record label, whatever. And then there was one song that I wrote with this comedian. And this comedian was actually the most popular comedian of the day. And we produced his album, which won a Hoku Award, by the way. So this is a little bit more side information. And it won a Hoku Award for Comedy Album of the Year. So anyway, he and I worked on this project, okay, for my project, because I wanted to put him on my project. And it was with this other guy too. So two of them, because they had a radio show. And so I put two of them on there, okay. I really thought that they would promote my Filipino CD in the community, because they had nothing to lose by doing that. They had everything to gain, but they just played their song on the radio, on the mainstream radio. They never promoted the album, so people never went looking for it, and that was the end of that. So anyway, now we get to the point where the album is finished. It's ready to go into the mainstream, and now we need to find distribution. We need to establish distribution. So I start taking the kids to the malls. So I started booking the malls. So we had the kids sing it at Windward Mall, at Pearl Ridge Center, at Ala Moana Center, like all these big shopping centers in Hawaii. And so the kids were performing all of this, and I was there. And a lot of people helped. Excuse me, a lot of people helped. And this guy who had a TV show, in fact, a couple of guys, they had TV shows on this network called OC16 in Hawaii. They put the kids on, And for me, I just wanted the kids to get out there and perform, share their music, share their talent, that kind of thing. So we did a lot of that. And anyway, so this Pinoy Musika CD ends up in Sam Goody's. Now, I have a picture of it on my Facebook, and I think I have a picture of it somewhere on Instagram or whatever. But anyway, it was really fulfilling for me, because I took these Filipino kids, okay? Now, most of these Filipino kids speak the language, okay? Because they understand the language because their mothers speak to them. Okay, so you got to know that there's this communication thing between mothers and kids, right? And the mother can speak in their mother tongue, right? Their first language, and the kids understand. They may not be able to respond, okay, in the respective languages, but they understand. And I thought that was so cool, because they could be in public someplace and communicate with their kids like under the wire, and nobody knows what they're saying. That was so cool. I thought it was cool anyway. But anyway, so these kids, right, come to me for lessons. And one day I had them all sit in group class. We had a group class, and so there was like 20 of them in group class. When I built my first school, we had 677 square feet, so we had a classroom. And so I used to have these kids sit in a circle. Now, in the area that I was in, it's a town called Kalihi. And so, these kids were all from the area. They were, from the neighboring schools, stuff like that. So I came in one Saturday and I said, all right, and I look and I see that they're all Filipino. Now, my school was built after I did Filipino radio. Okay, so I did Filipino radio first, did all of that, did all that stuff. And so now this is years later, okay? And there's no connection between the Filipino people that know me now as the voice teacher versus the Filipino people that knew me on Filipino radio because the distance was too far apart. So I left in 1992. I left in Filipino radio. I left Filipino radio in 1992. It wasn't until 2000 that I put up my school. Okay, it wasn't until 2000 that I put up my school in this town called Kalihi. So the people that used to hear me on the radio between 1987 and 1992 have long forgotten me. This is, it's a totally different generation now. These are young kids. Those people, some of them told me they kind of remember kind of thing, but it was too far away. So anyway, so now here's Voice Master Singing School. I go into group class. They're sitting in group class, and I see that they're all Filipino, right? So I go in and I go, all right, how many Filipinos we got in here? Okay, and they look around, and they're sitting in a circle, and they look at each other, and then some of them like are raising their hand halfway, but they're checking in with these other kids. They're to see if anybody's raising their hand, right? And some of them slowly raise their hand like they're slowly coming up slow. And I look at them and I go, what? Aren't you guys all Filipino? And then I start going around the room. Are you so-and-so? You Filipino? Yeah. So-and-so, you Filipino? Yep. So-and-so, you Filipino? Yep. And I go all the way around the room to all the kids, right? And then I go, well, you guys are all Filipino. So they, they look at me and stuff. So I started to tell them what I knew about Filipinos and how I worked in Filipino radio and how I worked in the Filipino community and how Filipinos, like the Filipinos I worked with, the Filipinos I met, the Filipinos I socialized with, right, at the events, at the weddings, at the baby parties, all of this stuff, they knew like 3 or 4 dialects. They were highly intelligent people. Okay, these guys were sharp. And not only that, but they were perceptive. And then, I started going into a little bit of the culture. Now I'm teaching the kids, okay? And I'm telling them about my experience. I'm telling them, I'm not Filipino, but I learned a little Tagalog and I did a Filipino radio show. And I was so proud of that fact. I told him that, right? So anyway, I go through this like 20-minute lecture on what it means to be Filipino and how you should be very proud you're Filipino, right? And at the end, I go, okay, now what I want to know, like after my lecture, right? I go, now what I want to know, and I treated these little kids like they're in a college class, and I told I told the kids, I said, now what I want to know is why you guys aren't proud of being Filipino. What's up with that? And little by little, they start coming out with these stories. Oh, well, the other kids, they're big and like we're small and like they take our lunch money in school. They bully us. And then, like that, right? And they go, they tease my mom because like she talks funny because she has the accent. And so they tease her. And then, so these kids started coming out with all these stories, all these things, right? So here's what I did. We did the singing lesson after that. We did all of that. Everybody sang and all, and then they were dismissed for the week, and they would come back every Saturday. So I went down to the swap meet and I bought this huge, giant Filipino flag, like real big one, and I put it on the wall in the classroom. Now, if you go to the Facebook site, okay, it's Voice Master Vocal Development on Facebook, you're going to see a bunch of kids, and these are like my first crop of students, and they're all standing in front of the Filipino flag, and we took everybody's picture in front of the flag. Sometimes you can't see the whole flag, but you see the colors, okay? And so we would have them, okay, go stand in front of the flag. We would take picture, and we would take pictures, okay? And they love pictures, right? Filipino people love pictures. They love to take pictures. They love to sing. They love to do all these things. So they're very creative, highly creative people, right? And I'm not being a racist or anything. I'm just saying this involves a Filipino story. This is about Filipinos, okay? So if you're not Filipino, don't be offended. I'm sure you're creative too. So anyway, so this happens, right? And you can see it all on Facebook, Voice Master Vocal Development. Pull it up, go look in the photo albums because I put everything up there for public record. So everybody knows that this happened, okay? Anyway, so all of my students at one point in the beginning of my journey in teaching voice were Filipino, every single last one of them. And then moving forward in history, right? I've been doing this 37 years. Every single one of my champions, every single one of my contest winners, and we had tons tons. We used to win everything. We were getting cocky after a while. We were getting cocky. We were like, oh, okay, another contest. All right, James, you want to enter this one? You want to win this one? Like, because I would get these kids to performance level, So and then we were getting cocky, and then we used to go down to they used to have this thing called karaoke, and we won karaoke like, I don't know, like two or three times, and we were getting hate from parents. They would see us coming, and they would go, "Oh, it's them," that kind of thing. Like it was like a Bad News Bears kind of. It was kind of like Karate Kid kind, where you have the two sides and the nemesis. Like it was fun, and my kids ate it up. They loved it. So anyway, right, and I used to call them my roosters, right? Because I used to tell them, hey, one chicken fight, you're the rooster, you're gonna win this derby. And we used to take the kids, and so we built a sense of pride up in them. Okay. And when I put the flag up, they came into that week. When they came back the following Saturday, I had the flag up in the classroom. So they went in the classroom and they sat down in a circle, okay, all the kids. And I purposely go in a little bit late. So I'm in my office. I had an office in there. And so I go from the office to the classroom about 2 minutes late, so they're all waiting, right? I walk in the classroom, I look at them without saying anything. I look around the circle, look at them. I look around the circle, and I go, all right, how many Filipinos we got in here? The hands shot up, like boom. Everybody was like, represent, everybody was like happy like that, right? And their hands went straight up, and you could see these kids, they were beaming with pride, okay? And I was like, okay, now we're making progress, right? I told the kids, now we're making progress. And then we started training. And then we won like all the contests. Then we started performing at all the malls, and we started doing all this stuff. Well, I selected some of these kids for the recordings because they were with me for a long time. So now we put them on Pinoy Musika. Okay, so that's the backstory. Now they're on Pinoy Musika. Now I'm dealing with this local record company, and they put it into Sam Goody's. Okay, we finally found somebody who would take it. Tower Records didn't take it. Sam Goody's took it. So I'm like, yeah, okay, we're in a major retailer. That was the goal. Okay, so now we're in there. Now we go to Sam Goody's to promote the CD. So we were having the kids sing in the store, like, sing a song, right? And then take turns. And we did maybe 3 or 4 or whatever. And then the kids would stand there and they would autograph the CDs for whoever bought the CD. That was the promotion, right? So you buy the CD, you bring it over to the kids. It's for the kids. It's for the, the community, whatever kind of thing. It was a community effort, kind of that ethnic kind of project, that kind of thing. And people came over, and the kids were signing autographs, and they felt so proud. They were so, you have to make kids feel big. You really do. When you're really strict with kids, when you're restrictive with kids, that doesn't work well. That does not end well. Okay, it doesn't. Sometimes they go to college, they get crazy. Okay, they get, because why? Well, because you suppressed them when they were young. Okay, now they're on their own. Boom, right? So anyway, but this happened. So we did the promotion. When we went into Sam Goody's, I got the kids in a circle, okay, in a huddle. And I told the kids, all right, now here's the mission. I want you guys to go in the whole store, and I want you to find just one other Filipino CD in Sam Goody's. Go ahead, try. I want you guys to try. So they went throughout the store, right? And they were kind of looking, and most of them, it was funny watching them, because they were like, well, I don't know where to look. I don't know. So they looked all over. Okay, they looked in the ethnic section. There was Spanish, the ethnic section. There was Spanish. There was Hawaiian. There was all these other Samoan. There was Polynesian. There was all this stuff, but there was no Filipino. Okay, so now I go, all right, look, you see this, and I show them the row that we put in, they stocked it, right, and it was this long row, and there was this little promotional card that they put up, the record company put up for them. And I said, you see? And they looked at it, and you should have seen their faces. You should have seen that warm glow on their faces, that accomplishment glow, the beaming with pride glow. You should have seen these kids. It was awesome. Okay. And from that day on, right, We were very proud of the project. We promoted it. Excuse me. We went to malls, shopping malls. We did the whole thing, and the kids were promoting it for a long time. And the idea was to duplicate what I saw done in the Filipino community. It didn't kind of work out the way I had planned it because the record company did not follow my marketing advice. And because I had experience marketing in the Filipino community, and they don't do it like they don't do it like mainstream people. Yeah, they don't do it like that. Okay, but what we did, what we proposed, did not happen, and the record company gave everybody X number of copies. I think they gave everybody 20 CDs, something like that, and that was it. Okay, and the kids sold whatever they sold, and then that was it. I had planned for them to do it like they did in the Filipino community, where they would sell and they would come back and they would go into the next project. Then we make one more, and but that never happened. We just did one, but it's on iTunes. So now, now that you know the story, so that's the Pinoy Musika story, and it was produced by Imua Productions for a local record company. Now, Imua Productions years later. In fact, it was a lot later. Imua Productions was in business until 2010, and then we retired the name. We created VMAC Consultants because of social media, because of the modern era, because we saw digital coming, because we saw all of that. So we changed it. But Imua Productions produced a lot of music, and we produced a lot of Filipino music for the Filipino community, for other people that recorded. Okay, so I had 3 number 1 songs in the Filipino community, just as a side note kind of thing. One was called Best of Friends, and that was these 2 girls that that were part of this club, and they made it a number 1 song. It was number 1 in the Filipino community. They would request this song on Filipino radio, like both stations, both competing stations, day and night, like all the time. These girls were stars. Okay, and I'm not going to mention names for legal purposes, but they were stars in their community. Okay, and I had a little bit to do with it, and so did Wayne Borge, my friend Wayne, because we put up our talent for them. We didn't charge them. So Wayne didn't charge them. I didn't charge them. I went in the recording studio. I played guitar for them. I did all this stuff for them. I put them on the radio. I made sure that their music was in rotation. So these are the things that I did. But I didn't charge. I didn't get money for any of it. I didn't charge for any of it. And then I wrote that song, Best of Friends. And I actually wrote it about those girls. And while I was writing it, there was a little sentiment about, my friend Wayne, because he was blind and we were best friends. And basically, we went down we made a bunch of music goals, went down the road, the music road, and accomplished everything we set out to do, basically. So, but these girls were like best friends, so we had them sing this Best of Friends song. Anyway, so that was number 1. Then I wrote, I was going with this girl, who will also remain nameless, but I was going with this girl, and I wrote these 2 songs about her. And one was called No One Else Could Love You More, and one was called Anything Para Sa'yo. Para Sa'yo in Tagalog means for you. Para, for, and then sa'yo, you. Okay, so Anything Para Sa'yo, and it was a kind of novelty kind of song. That song, No One Else Could Love You More, was a very deep ballad. And so there was this lady, okay, who will also remain nameless, but there was this lady who was on radio, and people liked her. She had charisma. Okay, she knew how to get people interested in what she was doing. It's kind of like that girl that sells Tupperware and gets everybody excited, and everybody's all, oh yeah, that kind of thing. She was that kind of girl, but she did it on radio, and everybody liked her program, and she had a very, very popular program. Well, I proposed the idea. Okay, and I got a lot of hatred for this, but I proposed the idea to her to record 2 of my songs, and I played it for her. I said, "You want to hear these songs? I think maybe they would be good for you." And I played it for her, and she goes, "Wow, I like that." And so the second song, the ballad, her mom actually did the translation. So her mom did the translation, and it was very deep Tagalog. And and then I learned it, right? I learned it. But then Wayne and I went in the studio and we produced her. And I didn't charge her 10 cents, not even 10 cents. She ended up giving me a thank you card with $100 in it. And I'm like, $100? Like she shouldn't have given me anything. I mean, I donated. It was from my heart, right? And it was from Wayne's heart too. We just wanted to help, we just wanted to do something and contribute something in the Filipino community. But here's the thing that happened, right? And this is why this is the life coaching part here. Always give, okay? Always give, because you never know what's going to happen when you give, okay? What happened was when she premiered these two songs on her radio show, okay, the songs shot to #1 in a matter of minutes. Minutes, okay? They never stopped requesting the songs. So she played the songs, and like people were still calling, could you play it again? Oh, that was beautiful. Could you play it again? Could you play it again? And so it was #1 in the Filipino community on both stations. And then a local TV station that they used to, there was this TV station that used to air this Filipino show, and I can say the name because they're no longer in business. But they had this show, and I don't think I'll say the name just in case, because I don't know if they're doing anything. But okay, I'll say it. Perlas USA. There was this show, Perlas USA. Oh yeah, these guys would put on this TV show on the weekends. So she got on that TV show and she sang it on the TV show, and sales went through the roof. She had a store in Kalihi, this lady who recorded the songs. She had a store. She sold tons and tons and tons of music. And I didn't want anything from it. I didn't want a dime from it. Why? Well, because first of all, I wasn't Filipino, and I didn't have the confidence to think that my songs that were, like rinky-dink, in my opinion, rinky-dink translation, because that's all I knew how to do, right? Simple stuff. So my stuff was simple, except, what her mom dressed up, what her mom made better with the deep Tagalog, right? My Tagalog is very conversational, very superficial, very light, very, whatever. And so I didn't really, want anything for it. I wanted to see what happened. I wanted to do it for her, because she was very nice to me. Very, very nice. She used to bring food to the radio station all the time. I mean, she was really sweet to me. So anyway, watching her just skyrocket like this was unreal, because here's this small little community, right? And not only our radio station played her stuff because it became popular overnight, but the other radio station, our competitor, started playing her because they had to, because they got requests for it like day and night, right? So this was very rewarding. It was very successful. So, in all, I had 3 #1 songs in the Filipino community between 1987. We recorded the songs in 88, actually. But between 1987 and 92, when I worked for Filipino radio, I had 3 #1 songs, produced 3 #1 songs. And those credits belong to Wayne Borge, to myself, and Imua Productions. And that was, so, we did a lot with the company. We also did an on-hold service where we, did recordings for hotels. I can say Hilton Hotels because we had the contract for them. And we did Turtle Bay and Hilton Hawaiian Village. And, when you call, you heard my voice going, if you want to order room service, press 1. That kind of whatever, that kind of stuff. You want information on this and that, press 5. I mean, that kind of thing. So we did that. Anyway, but the Pinoy Musika project, getting back to, what the podcast is about, right? Pinoy Musika was very important to me, because it's very important to me. I've done a lot of ethnic things in my life. When I was a child, I traveled to very far away places. I saw the original Tahiti, the original Bora Bora, the original Tahiti. Tahitians were not like they are now. They're not. It does not exist anymore. It's the old world, and the old world is gone. But I was so lucky. I mean, we landed in the lagoon in a seaplane in Bora Bora. It was amazing. just, I mean, so that all the experience, and, it was like a Indiana Jones kind of childhood that I had. And so we would come in on the seaplane. The seaplane would touch down in the lagoon, and the water would just spray by the windows, and it was fun to watch. It was fun to be there. It was fun to be a part of it, and I used to, and I made friends, and this girl, Vivian, in Bora Bora, and we used to dance and party. They used to party like every night. My parents used to like pay for these huge parties, and they, invite all the Tahitians, and they just used to want to have a good time. They just want to, have a nice time. And so they partied and partied and partied, and we stayed in Tahiti for like a couple months at a time. And same thing, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, Western, American Samoa, all of that. We did all of that. The people in Tonga were so nice to me that, they gave me the Tongan outfits and everything. And, I dressed up like that. And they made these luau's, what we call luau's. I don't know what they called them. I forgot. But it was like the huge spread, there was a big pig. I can't talk about the big pig on the table. Okay, there was this big pig on the table. It was awesome. So anyway, yeah, I love ethnic stuff. I love Filipino people, and I loved Pinoy Musika. You can get it, okay? Just go on iTunes, check it out, Pinoy Musika, and remember you heard it right here on the podcast. All right, hey, we want to thank VoiceMaster, family service companies, VoiceMaster Enterprises, and AFM Hawaii Music, Darren Chinen and his music. Till next time, I'm Junior Kekuewa Jr., and now you know the story of Pinoy Musika. I'm Junior saying mahalo and aloha.